100 baht. I think that intervention can be cost effective. How much dollar are you using to save an animal? In the EA space, that's what we tend to focus on, the trade-offs. And actually, you also have to ask yourself, if I don't do this intervention, who else is going to do it? And lastly, it's called the scout mindset. The scout mindset. We'll be will be will be better able to help others if working together to think clearly and orient toward finding the truth rather than trying to defend our own ideas. Humans naturally aren't great at this, aside from wanting to defend their own ideas. I think this is great. This is where That's why I say that this space is inclusive. If you have an idea and you think it is right, you you can raise it. If you can defend it and you can raise evidence that this intervention is the most effective one in helping the sentient beings, I think it's called mindset. That's why in effective autism they tend to evolve, they tend to do research and see which interventions are better. Yeah, those are the three concepts that we focus on when developing an effective mindset. That's why we say this space is for thinkers, people who think, people who see a problem and develop a solution. And the solution is evidence based. The solution is cost effective. Yeah. I think I would love to hear from you colleagues again. How can you define scope sensitivity, trade-offs, and scout mindset? No, any one of you, I need to pitch, I need to evaluate whether we are on the same page. You can unmute yourself and then share with me what's your take home on the effectiveness mindset. Because in our communities, our mind should be effective. And what should we put in mind? What should we consider? And I think we have so many links that I think Solin is going to post them in the group. Yeah, he's going to post them in the group, and you have more resources to read about. And then we shall proceed. Yes, Sorin, you can unmute and then share with
Thank
them.
you. Thank you. So I think you have asked how we perceive scout sensitivity, trade-offs, and scout mindset.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'll give my own take on it since nobody was volunteering, but hopefully someone will volunteer after me. So I see from what you have described to us, I understand scope sensitivity as being about impact, maximizing impact. That's what I understand when you say saving 10 lives is more important than saving one. I also kind of see it as utilitarianism. We have discussed in the past this ethical stance of utilitarianism when we look at maximizing impact. Does that sound right, Kigundu?
Absolutely. It's right. Maximizing impact.
Okay. So let me keep going. Trade-offs, I see it as well, I mean, it is a way of prioritizing the best causes possible. So exactly the ones that would maximize impact. So, I mean, ideally, we would help everyone, but since resources are limited, we have to choose which organizations we help, which causes we do. In our case, in Umoja Greenlands, which projects we do. So we try to look for maybe low-hanging fruits. So how do we, if we have, let's say, a project for providing clean water, and we have like three of them, we look at the one that is the least expensive that helps the maximum amount of people. Would that be it? Like,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Solin. Um, it's a pleasure to hear from you. Then we're going to proceed to differences in impact. You've talked about maximizing impact, and then we're going to proceed to differences in impact. Here they're saying that around 700 million people live in poverty, mostly in low-income countries. Efforts to help them by policy reform, cash transfers, or provision of health services can be incredibly effective. Alongside investigating this issue, we also discuss how much more effective some interventions are than others, and we introduce a simple tool for estimating important figures. Yeah, I think it's just a preamble. We are on week 2, differences in impact. Um, it's just a preamble. Effective practitioners of effective altruism acknowledge that the world is facing different challenges. You know, we may not be facing the same challenges we people from Africa as challenges faced by people from the Europe and the US. Take a scenario: those economies are advanced. They are talking about AI, but actually here in Uganda or in East Africa, we have still people. We have people who are starving. We have people who don't have access to clean water. We have children who are dying because of malaria. We have families that cannot educate their children because they cannot earn $1 per day. So those are the problems. So the differences in impact. We are asking ourselves a question. How are we going to solve those problems? Is it a question of direct giving out cash directly? Is it a question of policy reform, enacting laws that promote the welfare of people? Is it giving direct food donation? If it's malaria, is it giving out nets, mosquito nets, treated mosquito nets to people? The difference is impact. Here in the differences in impact, we have basically two concepts. As we say that, as we had 3 concepts in the previous um, session about effectiveness mindset, here we have 2 concepts, and one of the concepts is again difference in impact. It appears to be of our option to help do many times more than others. People generally do not appreciate this and to miss out on significant opportunities to help. I think here I just want to read the preamble for you to hear what effective altruism or authors of this content wanted to share with you. But actually, if you can localize the content, the differences in impact is on the numbers and the cost effectiveness. Let's give a scenario. We have a certain village where people are dying of malaria, and one of the interventions we have is giving out free treated mosquito nets. We have another intervention of um, giving families money to treat themselves. The question will be, which intervention will be impactful? Is it giving out money? Is it giving out mosquito nets? So I want to pose a question. If a certain village if a certain community is having individuals that are dying of malaria, we all know malaria is caused by mosquitoes. What solution do you have at the table? You have 10,000 US dollars to save that community. Are you going to give them treated mosquito nets? Are you going to give money directly to affected families and they treat themselves for malaria? Which interventions are you going to take and why? Am I clear on that question?
Yes, you're clear.
Yes, Joseph. I want to hear from you. Which
Yes, you
intervention
are.
would you take?
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you, Joseph.
Yeah, I thought you were to continue because you wanted an assurance from us whether we were the audience is getting you. But now that you're asking for an intervention, um, in reference to malaria, I don't think giving cash to the community members is a good thing. But buying mosquito nets, because we have to look at the what can be dealt with immediately. So we could give them mosquito nets, and also in case in the event of disease that some are suffering from malaria, then they can go to hospital and then the organization can pay the bills. Yes, because if we want to give them cash directly, there are other needs that they would divert this money to address. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I love your argument. And actually, your argument is going to push us to another concept called the Fermi estimates. I love your estimations. Joseph was overview that if you give cash, such families are vulnerable. They have other needs. They may divert cash meant to treat the sick individuals to other needs, and then the cash won't serve its purpose. And then Joseph is bringing like that. If you give mosquito nets, yes, they prevent, but actually, when someone is already contacted with malaria, the mosquito nets may not treat malaria. So his submission was a double-edged sword. It was like each intervention has its advantage and each intervention has its disadvantage. Thank you very much, Joseph. I love that. I love that estimation. I think with that, Solin is having his hand up. Solin, you can share your mind. Which intervention can you take on?
I mean, I do share the opinion that Joseph had, like, which is we should give the malaria nets. But I actually had a question, if it was possible, Chigundu.
Yeah.
It's a pragmatical question about Fermi estimates. And it is because in Umoja Greenlands, we do have some, as I mentioned, we have a lot of submissions for helping with clean waters initiatives. Would it be possible to run Fermi estimates on the different projects to find out roughly which one is the best?
Of course, yes, Solin. You need to estimate.
Yes.
You need
Would
to
you
estimate.
and
And actually,
do you know
y-
more information about how to run this Fermi estimates?
yeah, actually, when you're running the estimates, first of all, we need first look at we need first look at the problem that you're trying to address. We
Hmm.
look at the complexity of the problem. Let me give a scenario. Village A is facing drought. Village B is not facing drought, but actually they don't have access to quality seeds to plant. So you need to you need to estimate now which 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 intervention will be suited for the different areas. You need to look at if a certain community is not having clean safe water, they are vulnerable to diseases like cholera, diarrhea, because they don't have water. Typhoid, they're going to drink water that's not safe. And then if a certain community is not having food, and I think if you look at famine, it is mostly brought by drought. Is brought by drought. If there is what we call famine, you are going to see what we call malnutrition among children because they don't have access to nutritious foods. But you have two interventions. Should I give out seeds? Should I give communities to access clean water? For me, personally, I would go for clean water. The reason is Clean water is solving multiple problems. One, it is addressing the question or the problem of inaccess to safe drinking water. Because if the family or if communities cannot access clean water, they are vulnerable to diseases that I've mentioned. So the water problem is solved. However, we have what we call irrigation farming. Remember, when we don't have water, in most cases, it is caused by drought for areas like Karamoja, where it takes long for rain to come, where they have prolonged dry seasons. But water can also be used by the communities to do what we call irrigation farming. If that community they're having seeds, but they don't have access to clean water. So for me, I think water is essential. We need to dig wells for communities, and the wells can be used in addressing the question of water shortage among the community members, and then the same water can be used by the community in irrigation farming, and they grow crops, and there is food security. That's how I estimate which intervention to take. I don't know, Solin, what's your mind on that, or anyone on this space? You can share with us. What do you think? Because before taking an intervention, we need to estimate the impact and the need. Solin, have I addressed your question right?
Yes, thank you. I mean, it was very interesting. It's very interesting because it's pragmatically real for us at Umoja Greenlands. Those are the two kind of projects we have: clean water or giving seeds. When we're trying to do both, my question was actually because even for just clean water, there we have many submissions and many communities that could receive it. So we do also have to face the choice of which ones we do, which ones we don't. It is kind of that trade-off that you were talking about before, right? So I mean, we would need a way of doing this Fermi estimates between the different projects in order to make the best trade-off, as you were telling us on the previous slide. So that's what I was getting to.
Of course, yes. Thank you very much, Solin. Colleagues, if you have a question, do not hesitate to raise up your hand, because I'm going to move on to another pillar. And I think here we need to be extra attentive. It's called radical empathy. Radical empathy. We have questions, and I think, Solin, I will share with you a Word document of this content, and you post it in the group so that those who are interested, they can peruse through. Yeah. We're going to talk about radical empathy, and I think this one seems to be common among us, we colleagues who have spent more than 5 hours in the EA space. And with that, I want to invite any member on this space to share your mind on matters radical empathy. When you speak about radical empathy, what comes to your mind? Okay, empathy. What comes to your mind when you talk about empathy? Because I think we shall build on the meaning of empathy to dig deep into the broader perspective of radical empathy. So I want to hear from any of you colleagues. Radical empathy. I mean empathy.
Maybe we could just have a round table if you want, Chigundu,
Yeah,
and just like slowly go to people and ask them to say a few words what empathy means to them.
No, I think Tony has something to
Oh,
share.
okay, great. Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tony.
I just need one
yes.
individual. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I was saying that empathy is it's kind of like sharing the feeling of another person to be able to understand how someone else feels. So being able to understand the feeling of another person.
Thank you very much, Tony. I love the fact that you've talked about all about feeling, what another person is feeling. I think that's right. Yeah. Radical. Could someone is someone else having an alternative view? Tony, that's great.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. With me, I think it's a deep understanding and connection with others' experience and perspectives.
Many things. This is amazing.
Mm.
The deep connection with other species that are surrounding you. You know, it may not be human beings, but other species. I think I'm not going to. I would love to hear from Solim. Solim, what comes to your mind when you hear about the term radical empathy or empathy?
I'm going to talk about empathy first, as I'm not that familiar with radical empathy. So, empathy to me is feeling the suffering of other beings, be them human or non human. So, I mean, when we see someone suffer, we partially feel the same suffering, and we, because of that, are motivated to take action on alleviating the suffering of someone else. That is what I understand by empathy, which is also something that I think comes before compassion when we want to alleviate the suffering of other beings without necessarily feeling it. That's what I
Thank,
understand.
thank you very much, Solim. I think personally, I'm not going to distance myself from what the pre-current speakers have said. But I think something being radical is something being extreme. If you know what I mean, something being extreme. So here, empathy we all know is just about having feelings for other beings, be humans or non-humans. So there is one of the great philosophers called Jeremy Bentham. For those who went to the Ava Summit, or for those who have been to conferences for animal advocacy, or for those who have read different books about animal sentience, they have always quoted this. The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? Why should the law refuse its protection to any sensitive being? The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer? That statement is the genesis of empathy. That statement confirms that the non-human animals or the animals are sentient beings. They feel pain. It's not about can they talk or can they reason, because I believe that we humans we have a higher reasoning capacity compared to other mammals. But the question is, we should not look at that only. We have to look at the question of suffering. Can they feel the pain? And the pain is all about having a sensitive nervous system, having nerves connected all over the body. I'll take a scenario. If you get a cat and hit it on its tail, it will scream. Just a justification that it's feeling pain. It is feeling pain. I think that's a cat. Let me give that's a companion animal. Let me give an example of the farmed animals, the birds. If you get a hen and then you try to remove one of its feathers, what will be the reaction? It will feel pain. It will be like it wants to run. You know, it is a justification that it is feeling pain, though it cannot talk, it cannot reason, but it can feel pain. And actually, this great philosopher was bringing to light why we need legal frameworks to protect animals from cruelty. But in the same line, he was confirming that animals are sentient beings that have abilities to feel pleasure and pain. I'll give another scenario for those who rear dogs at home. When a dog sees or when a dog observes his master um, is not in his mind, his master is in grief, you will see, for those who have been around dogs, that the same dog will not be in the same mood or to be in the same mood as that of its master. It's bringing light that there is that emotional connection. You know, I've done some little science, and what differentiates us from the dogs is just something. I think we differ from the class, where we humans are called the primates, but we are all from kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, yeah, class Mammalia. I think we differ from the order. We have the primates, we, man, the chimpanzee, um, the baboons, but actually we are all animals. We are all under phylum Chordata. We have a functioning nervous system. So the question is, why should you expose other sentient beings to pain? I think that's why the question of radical empathy comes in. So here we have three concepts that define radical empathy. As we said in the previous sessions, that each concept had no each idea or each pillar of effective autism had concepts that defined it. And with radical empathy, we have basically three concepts that define radical empathy. And the first one, it is called impartiality. I think it will be the first time for you colleagues who are on this space to hear about the word impartiality. But actually, impartiality, let me just read from what uh, from our reference material. They're saying that helping those that need it the most, only discounting people according to location, time, and species, if those factors are in fact morally relevant. I think here it's just about impartiality. How can I phrase it? You help those who are in need without without focusing on the location, without focusing on their species, without focusing um what else can I talk about? Location, species. Yeah, I think those two factors, because one of the colleagues will be like, I'm from Uganda. Why should I be concerned about someone who's suffering from Rwanda? I think now you're undermining that pillar. Someone is saying, I'm a human being. Why should I be concerned about birds that are kept in cages? I think now you're undermining that factor. You know, you need to be concerned because we believe that they are all sentient beings, they feel pain. I was saying that take a scenario when someone is kept in a cage and you can't stretch, what will you feel? I don't think you feel good. I think you need to put yourself in the shoes of those birds that are kept in cages. And that's what impartiality is all about. Um, they're saying that we have expected value. I think it's just about the actions. What are the outcomes of our actions? Yes, you acknowledge that birds in cages need to be free, and you're advocating for them to be free. But the question is, what's your expected value? According to our reference here, they're saying that we often uncertain about how much something will help. In such circumstances, it can make sense to weigh each outcome by the likelihood that they occur and pick the action that looks best in expectation. I think here we're just looking at the expected value vis-a-vis the interventions we have. Let me give a scenario of birds in cages. One individual is talking about engaging farmers, you know, engaging farmers to drop the cage system of keeping birds to free range. Another individual, and the expected outcome is to see birds freed from cages. And then another individual or organization is working with policymakers to enact a law that prohibits the rearing of birds in cages. The expected value is birds free. And then another person is working with restaurants and other hotel chains to stop purchasing eggs from companies or from farmers that are keeping birds in cages, because they believe that if these farmers do not have market for their products, courtesy of keeping birds in cages, they will change. They will change to the free range system so that they can supply their eggs to hotels. So that's the expected value here, is to see birds freed from cages. But actually, you have three interventions. Of course, we shall go back to pillar one, the effectiveness mindset. You know, then pillar two, where we talked about pillar two, where we talked about um we talked about how we talked about the differences in impact, and we talked about this pillar called the Fermi estimates. You know, you now need to evaluate. You know, if I work with farmers, if I work with hotels, we call them the corporate campaigns, we call them the egg commitments. If I work with the lawmakers, which one is effective? But we should remember the value is here to see birds freed. I think I'm bringing out the picture on the meaning of the word or the term expected value. And then impartiality, I've also talked about it. And then I'm going to talk about the importance and the importance and the difficulty of considering unusual ideas. Yeah, I think it's another concept of radical empathy. I think we need to draw back. We are from Africa, and most of these people, or the citizens, or the residents of Africa, are so they're not connected with animal warfare. They think that animals they should be treated in a cruel manner. They don't deserve rights. They don't deserve to be treated in a manner that protects their well-being, you know. But we as practitioners of effective altruism, we have to be vibrant on the question of animal welfare. It is unusual idea into the society, but actually, if you look at what we call the cause neutrality, one of the pillars of effective altruism, we have to look at our actions. We should not base on the species, maybe on the location of our actions. That's why we say if they're feeling pain, we need to advocate for them to live in a life where they're free from pain. And then I'm talking about the animals. You know, it's a new concept. I think in one of our outreaches here in Uganda, we face so many questions from the natives. They're asking us that, what do you earn from advocating for the welfare of animals? Because for them, they believe that these are animals. They don't have a moral question of treating them in a manner that is friendly, or a manner that does not incur pain to them. I think this is where it's another concept in radical empathy. Why are you concerned about the welfare of animals, yet you're of different species? The question is, they can feel pain, though they cannot talk, though they cannot reason, but they feel pain. And it's our role to advocate for their well-beings. When floods are in, for example, I'm in Kampala, Uganda, but actually when floods hit Nairobi, I'm just sorry to use Nairobi as an example, I'll be concerned, though I'm from a different location from Nairobi. As an effective altruist, let me give an example of Soli. Solin had his biography. He's from Canada. Baraka is concerned about the well-being of people in Uganda and Kenya who do not have access to clean water. I think now we see, if he wasn't a practitioner of effective altruism, he'd be like, why do I need to stress myself over the question of water shortage in Uganda and Kenya? He could still stay in Canada and then pursue his career. But he said, no, we need to address this question. And Umoja Greenland is doing a good job in giving people access to clean water and offering seeds to farmers to engage in agriculture. Because remember, if you don't have food, you cannot progress. And actually, the leading cause of inflation in African economies is shortage of food. It's a driver of inflation. And for those who have done economics, you know the adverse impacts of inflation on the standards of living of communities. So we left with 5 minutes, basically 4 minutes, and I want to invite questions from you colleagues. But before I invite your questions, I want to thank everyone who has spared over 60 minutes and you've converged on this space and discussed matters effective autism. I can't thank you enough because you've spent you've spent your time with us. And actually you would use this time to do other valuable stuff. I don't take that for granted. We need to build the effective autism, in our communities from where we come from. We need to find solutions for the problems we are facing in our community, and the solution should be cost effective. We should maximize impact. Thank you very much, colleagues. I think in the remaining 3 minutes, we can have some questions before we call off the session. Yeah.
Are there more principles, Kigundo?
There are so many. Actually, we are moving slowly. I don't want us to go. I don't want us to rush in this, because I want us to go slowly so that people can understand. And actually, I'm going to leave you. You have to reflect on these principles. And in our next session, before you check in, you tell me, how has this session helped you to change your thinking ability or the way you view things in your community? Which problem have you identified, and which solution do you think can address that problem? I think we need to have that in our coming session. We need to evaluate whether this space is of great value to the people who are joining it. Yeah. I think that's what I believe in solving.
Great, thank you. There is one more question. What role can education play in promoting empathy and compassion towards animal in African communities? It's a question from Josephine. And we only have a few minutes, but if you want to say a few words, Kigundo.
Thank you very much, Josephine. I think education is just about creating awareness about the sentience of animals. Remember, there's a book called Change by Droughton. It brings to light that for behavior change to occur in communities, education is very instrumental. You need to create awareness, especially in the informal economies or in the informal individuals, on the importance of protecting animals from quality. You have to bring to light that they are sentient beings. They have a nervous system. They also feel pain. But the role of education is creating awareness. But actually, the shortcoming of education or the disadvantages of education in promoting compassion and ethical living of animals. Intellectuals in the ES space say that they can't evaluate its impact. They can't evaluate its impact. Yes, I've been on TV. I've talked about why animals should be treated in a good way or in a manner that does not promote cruelty. But like when I'm on TV, I can't evaluate whether people have understood my message and they have put it into practice. That's why mostly in ES space, they believe in policies, enacting policies. For example, if you see animals being carried in a manner that undermines one of the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, then you work with the policymakers, especially the ministry and the judiciary, and then enact a policy to address that. And you put punishments. Yeah, but education can be essential. Thank you very much, Nanyombi. I'm seeing a colleague again. Joseph is supplementing. He's saying that this radical empathy is a powerful framework beyond individuals' feelings to actively address systematic injustices and drive sustainable community transformation. I've learned that. Thank you very much, Joseph. I love the fact that you've highlighted your take home. Joseph, in our coming session, when you're checking in,